For this assignment, I implemented a physics engine into my game here. So the first thing I'll note is that all the asteroids now have physics attached to them. They all have dynamic rigid bodies, and so they can actually interact with each other, as well as the bullets actually have real physics too. So when I shoot a bullet, you can see that it will actually go out and hit the asteroids. To make the game more fun, the weights aren't particularly realistic. The asteroids do in fact have a significantly greater mass than the bullets. As you can see, they're just kind of deflecting off there, but they do push them around more than they probably would in real life. You can also see that the character itself actually is a physics dynamic body as well. That was fun to implement. All the manual velocity and movement calculations that I was making before are now all done in the physics engine. So when moving, I wanted to make it feel a bit more like a spaceship. So as you're moving around, you can see that if I press and hold a key, I'll actually accelerate, and then I'll have a deceleration period that might be the thrusters pushing back or something like that. But the movements are no longer instantaneous. And as you might have noticed as I shot, I actually moved backwards as well. I'm running into an asteroid, I guess. I actually moved backwards, so there's recoil to the bullet. I wasn't sure how to implement this, or if there was a way to have a equal but opposite reaction integrated into physics. I couldn't figure that out, but there's a manual opposite reaction that occurs. That's basically just whatever force I put on the bullet to shoot it outwards is the opposite force put on the player. And the asteroids will also interact with each other. They have a continuous movement. You can see that they slightly move around. I had an issue with the asteroids actually going to sleep, so I had to figure out, first off, what sleeping was, and I had to see that apparently there's a minimum to the amount of movement that they can do before they go to sleep. So my entire scene was going to sleep, and it was an interesting problem because they weren't wanting to wake up. I eventually got around it by forcing all the objects to wake up, which probably isn't a good long-term solution, but did work for me and got everything working. I also played around with the values for the materials. So basically, the asteroids don't actually have much friction against each other because I wanted them to interact as much as possible. I also played with the value for I think it was restitution. I'm honestly not sure. I forget the word for it. But the final value of the material, I basically changed that to be very high for the asteroids when hitting each other, so they would have a very big bouncing effect. And I made it very low for the bullet because I know that the bullet would probably transfer most of its energy into whatever it hits, especially given the size difference. I'm not quite sure how PhysX manages it, but I found some values that would be good. The asteroids have linear damping, so just like the player, if you hit them, they will eventually stop moving in space, which probably isn't realistic for space, but again, for the game, it definitely makes sense. They don't, though, have angular damping. I disabled that so that if you get one of them spinning, they will spin for a long, long time. But yeah, this is pretty cool. I was very excited to play around with the physics engine. Getting the player hooked up probably was majority of my time, and is, I think, the biggest accomplishment here. And yeah, I'm very happy with how it came out. I had to play with the bitwise locking operator too, because for the character we really only care about position, and I didn't want to implement that on the player level because I knew the physics engine ought to have something to lock it. So I ended up locking its angular velocity and angular motion at all. So I actually don't bother setting that one because I couldn't figure out how to have the mouse basically interact with that. But I did lock the player's Z movement, so there's no discontinuity between the model in physics and the model in the actual game. So for example, if I run into an asteroid and I'm hitting the top, it won't shoot me upwards in the simulation, but just not reflect that in the game. It actually won't be moving at all in the simulation due to the locks that I put on it. And like I said, same with the angular velocity, just so there's no discrepancy between what the physics simulation thinks I'm at and what it's actually at. But yeah, so it's actually turning into a pretty fun game. I'm pretty happy with it.